Hello, and welcome back to more Films Under Constant Critique, where we take a look at films, some good, some bad, and some downright awful. I'm Bongo Baikov, joined by our host, Maverick Drenzaria. This week, we're taking a look at the film Batman Begins.
Which apparently you hadn't seen.
No, this is my very first time watching the movie.
And I hadn't realized this until right before we started recording. Apparently. Because I could have sworn you'd seen it. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I just never ended up watching Batman Begins or The Dark Knight Rises. I've only made it through The Dark Knight before this.
Which we will get to The Dark Knight, and I've seen all of these, obviously. But I hadn't realized. Jesus. I feel like this podcast is turning into me, like...
making me watch movies that I've never seen.
Yeah. So, okay, a little bit of background on this one. So, okay, it came out in 2005 in the United States on June 15th, 2005, and then in the United Kingdom 2 days later.
But it actually came out in Tokyo first on May 31st.
Tokyo, huh, that's interesting.
Which is interesting that its first release was in Japan.
And this is the first Batman movie in 8 years, because Batman and Robin was such a huge disaster.
It just absolutely killed interest in the franchise.
It was basically the Superman 4 for the franchise. Which I take it you like this movie better than Batman and Robin and Batman Forever.
1000% so. This was so lovely to watch. And actually, like, recently, like, after watching it, I was, like, thinking back to the other films, just remembering how awful Batman Forever and Batman and Robin were. And then just being so happy that Batman Begins was good.
Which, yeah, that was basically the mindset they had, was those movies did so horribly. And they also just were really cartoonish and stuff, so they wanted to make it a darker movie, basically, a darker Batman movie. Apparently at one point they wanted Darren Aronofsky to do a Batman adaptation, but that didn't happen. And we ended up with Christopher Nolan directing, and before this, he had done... Like, he wasn't, like, as huge as he is now, obviously. At this point, he had done Memento, and he had done the remake of Insomnia, which are both pretty good movies, but, like, it wasn't, like,
he was still kind of an unknown.
He was kind of unknown, which that is interesting that they would take that risk of letting, like, a somewhat unknown director helm such a huge project like this.
Yeah, but he did a fantastic job, and, you know, his career ended up taking off quite a bit after that.
And basically, he wanted this to be a Batman movie set in a world that you would be more likely to see in, like, a crime drama, which, watching it, definitely makes sense, you know, with all the stuff with, like, crime lords and stuff.
There was actually something interesting that somebody pointed out about this movie. The older Batman films, like, starting with Michael Keaton, and then even The Batman, which came out just a few weeks ago, they both kind of have a specific art direction that they take with Gotham, so it seems a little bit more, like, fantastic or, like, somewhat of, like, a nightmare or a dream. But in this series, it's just Chicago, which I find great.
Yeah. Also, apparently the original title of this movie was Batman Beginning. I don't know if you knew that.
Huh. It's not as catchy as Batman Begins.
But they changed it because, yeah, Batman Begins sounds better. And so you have Christian Bale was cast as Batman / Bruce Wayne, which I think that choice makes sense, you know?
Yeah. He did a pretty good job with it.
Because he has the physicality, and, we know he can play crazy rich guys because of American Psycho. So
So we had Michael Caine as Alfred Pennyworth.
Michael Caine, which that's like a no shit casting choice.
Yeah, no, that was fantastic. Michael Caine he plays an amazing Alfred.
Yeah. Which what I like about that is he also adds a little bit of dry humor to the movie because
Yeah,
it's a really serious movie. So it's nice to have
yeah,
like little bits of levity here and there from Alfred. And yeah, Michael Caine obviously very well cast. Liam Neeson, he was cast in this.
yeah, and he did a pretty good job.
He's really good. Yeah. We'll get to when we start recapping the plot. We'll get to who he is. Gary Oldman. Now that's an interesting choice because usually he plays Gordon in this.
Yeah,
And he's usually cast as villains in movies.
he did a pretty good job with Gordon, I feel, and he also just kind of looked a bit like him too, which definitely helped. Like if you see what Gordon looks like in the comics, it's pretty similar.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I watched The Professional like a few months ago, and his performance in that is like so good. It really shows how good of an actor he is that he could like
Just
play
completely
just
different.
this complete psychopath and then also go to playing like one of the only genuinely good cops in Gotham. So
I mean, I guess we also have that with Batman being played by Bale.
that's true, yeah. Oh man, that says a lot about Gotham that the only people that can save it are two psychopaths. Gosh.
Then we also have Cillian Murphy, who plays Dr. Jonathan Crane, also known as the Scarecrow.
Which one thing I read is he was cast in this movie because Nolan thought his eyes were right for the part.
Yeah, I could see that.
Which, yeah, there was like some shots, he's got like really like unsettling like eyes in the...
Yeah. He does have a pretty nice, like, I don't want to say physical presence because it's not quite that, but like you see him and you believe that he is, the Scarecrow.
The lunatics are running the asylum, like they say in the movie at one point. And he's kind of forgotten about a little bit when people talk about like the villains in these movies. I think just because they seem to all get overshadowed by Heath Ledger in the next one.
True.
Which to be fair, I mean, that's a legendary performance. So,
yeah.
And then Katie Holmes was also cast in this as Rachel.
Rachel Dawes, kind of like a love interest character for Bruce.
Which she seems kind of out of place in this movie.
Yeah.
Compared to some of the other ones.
And the thing is, actually, she is an original character for this series, I believe.
She wasn't in the comics?
I don't think so. I think she was made for this.
That's interesting. I also forgot that Rutger Hauer was in this movie. He's like the guy that tries
he was
taking over Wayne Enterprises.
Yeah. He doesn't show up too often.
Yep, Roy Batty from Blade Runner is in a Batman movie. Yeah, he's not really in the movie all that much. Oh, Morgan Freeman. Can't forget Morgan Freeman.
Yep, as Lucius Fox, who really hasn't appeared in any of the other movies, but I do know that he's a pretty well-established character in the comics.
Yeah.
He basically serves the same role in this as he does in the comics, where he's basically doing R&D work for Batman. Yeah, so I guess my kind of initial thoughts, since this was my first time ever watching the movie, was that it's a pretty good origin story for Batman.
Yeah.
Which we hadn't really seen before this in terms of movies, because, the 4 movies that were made in the 80s and the 90s, it really wasn't an origin story. It kind of took place in this world where Batman was already like an established figure. Bruce Wayne had already kind of mostly gotten over his parents, so he wasn't really that broody in those films. And so instead what we get with this is like day one Batman, and then seeing how Bruce Wayne builds up to becoming Batman, which is definitely an interesting thing to see. that being said, I don't think they could ever go back and do another true Batman origin story for a while, just because everyone's going to be like, they just remade Batman Begins.
And actually, I think this is actually the first Batman movie I ever saw, believe it or not.
Really?
So for a while, this was actually what I thought of Batman. You know, what I thought Batman was. You know, and because I hadn't really seen the origin story before. I guess this is like one of the only adaptations of the origin story. Now that I think about it. And I thought it did a really good job of like establishing and setting things up. It does take a little while for Batman to show up. But to be fair, you know, the first Superman movie kind of did the same thing.
Yeah, we're like the first act or so focused on Clark Kent.
Okay, so I guess we can get into recapping the plot of this one.
So the movie starts off with basically just a short recap of Bruce's childhood. So it starts with him playing around, the grounds of Wayne Manor, and he ends up falling into a well and is attacked by a swarm of bats.
Just swarms and swarms of bats. That's a lot of bats.
And despite the fact that he's incredibly terrified of this, he doesn't remember that place for a good long while into the movie.
The beginning, it keeps like doing flashbacks.
Yeah.
And then like it shows Bruce and like where Bruce is now. So it was kind of jarring for a second.
Yeah. You kind of have to wait to get your bearings with the intro to this movie.
If I remember right, the first scene you have a Bruce where he's played by Christian Bale. He's in like a prison or something.
I forget the name of the place, but like the village that he's in studying martial arts and things.
It looks like a prison or something. I don't know. But he's like, when he's there, this guy like attacks him. He like gets in this big fight. The guy like says, "You are in hell and I am the devil," which is a pretty good line. And after this scuffle, he gets thrown in a cell, and you see Liam Neeson.
Yeah, Henry Deckard.
Blade Runner reference right there. Or no, that's
but over time, you begin to learn that Liam Neeson is not playing Henry Deckard. He's actually playing a character named Ra's al Ghul. Yeah, who's one of the two main villains of this movie.
Which that was a huge twist at the time, because like Liam Neeson was mostly known for like
playing good guys.
Good guys, yeah, you know, Schindler's List, Rob Roy, or another movie we did on this podcast, The Phantom Menace.
I was just about to mention that one.
While watching this, I kept thinking during the beginning of this movie, he's basically just playing Qui-Gon again.
Yeah.
He also has kind of a rebellious streak like Qui-Gon did, so there's that.
Yeah.
But what's the group he's in? It's called the League of Shadows.
Which is kind of like, almost like a vigilante group where they want to help improve the world, but they kind of do it through somewhat violent means, like taking out criminals, things like that. And
they basically dropped Bruce in the middle of nowhere. Just to see if he could survive, I guess. Yeah. Which is sort of like that episode of The Office where Michael just wants to get dropped in the middle of nowhere.
And then he's got Dwight following him around the whole time, making sure he's all right.
Exactly, yeah. Finds their like mountain fortress, and the fake Ra's al Ghul is there.
And then they see he has the flower, and then they kind of start with this ceremony. All right, hold on real quick. I'm like dying. I need to grab some water.
It's not the first time this has happened on the podcast.
Bruce has to take like this hallucinogen and then fight off like quite a few of the different, I guess they're ninjas that are part of the League of Shadows.
And then you get more flashbacks, you know. Most of which are to establish, you know, his parents and stuff. Like, apparently Thomas Wayne built the public transportation system in Gotham, so he's a very influential guy in that city.
Yeah, and I believe this is also when they show the moment that Bruce Wayne saw his parents get killed by Churchill.
Yeah, they show that. Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
So basically, the setup of this movie, it's basically sort of like what the first Superman movie did, where it takes a while to establish, like, his origin story. Then it gets to the main plot with the villains.
Yeah.
Stuff. Although it is a little more intercut than that movie was, with, like, flashbacks and stuff.
Yeah. And I think it definitely works better for this since I think it was planned as a trilogy, or that there would be at least more than one movie. So they knew that they could spend a little bit more time.
Imagine if this movie had bombed and they never made any other ones. Then that makes the ending of the movie very pointless.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, I'll talk about this more once we actually get to the ending, but the ending already is kind of pointless.
They show the training stuff, where Liam Neeson's, like, training Batman, which that might have been why, for a while, this is one of my favorite Batman movies, and that is sword fighting.
Yep.
You get sword fighting in a Batman movie.
And guess what? Batman never uses his swordman fighting techniques again.
Just in the training stuff,
Yeah.
It was cool, though, seeing him fight with Liam Neeson,
Yeah.
Just like in The Phantom Menace. Basically, a lot of flashbacks are also happening, too. So.
Yeah. Which I feel like it's kind of difficult to sort through that intro just because of how often it flashes between.
Which, this isn't, like, the first or even the last time that Nolan has done this.
Yeah.
Memento, that movie, like, all the scenes are out of order. Or hell, like, recently he did a Tenet, which, if anybody is able to follow the plot of that one, please explain to me.
I think at this point is when they show kind of the more recent flashback to just a few years before the whole training stuff takes place. Where Bruce, he kind of has this weird emo hairstyle going on. And they've tracked down Joe Chill and they're putting him on trial for murdering his parents. Yep. And he decides that he's going to actually shoot Joe Chill and take his revenge. Obviously Rachel is not happy with this, but he's going to do it anyway.
He didn't shoot. I thought he didn't shoot him.
No, he doesn't.
It was some other guy.
Yeah, so he, like, starts to pull out the gun, but then somebody else, like a hitman from Falcone, this crime boss, ends up shooting Joe Chill before Bruce can. And then that kind of wakes up Bruce for a second. He's like, I can't do this, and he throws the gun into the river. And then leaves for China, because that's the natural thing you want to do right after that.
And before that, like, Rachel, like, slaps him and says, your father would be ashamed of you.
Yeah.
I wonder why Katie Holmes didn't come back for the sequels. From her performance in this, I don't understand why.
Anyway, then it kind of cuts back to present day. And
also, another thing is Gotham in this movie, like, looks like just a crime-ridden just mess.
Yeah.
It looks more like something out of, like, Taxi Driver. Or
it really does.
All that's missing is Bruce just saying, you talking to me in front of a mirror or something.
Well, at that point, then he's just start making the Joker movie, let's be honest.
Yeah, that's true. And he goes and confronts Falcone, the crime lord, in, like, a restaurant, I think, or something.
Yeah, it's like this weird underground restaurant thing. Where it's, like, underneath an underpass for whatever reason.
So he decides to leave. He trades his coat with a homeless man.
Yep.
Which I thought this scene was kind of funny, So it's nice to have little moments of, like, levity here and there,
Yeah.
He, like, says, it's a nice coat. Yeah, and what's weird is he sees this homeless man again.
Yeah, later on in the movie when he's on the docks.
It's like 10 years later. And he looks exactly the same. He has the same fucking coat.
Yeah, and as Batman, he looks over and goes, nice coat.
There's another training scene where, in this one, he has to find Liam Neeson among this huge group of ninjas.
Yeah.
And he's also on hallucinogens. And he ends up tricking him and succeeding, so they want him to join their group.
And for the final rite of initiation, to join the group, he has to execute this criminal that they brought him.
But he refuses.
And so then after that, after his refusal, they take kind of an offense to that. And so he has to fight the entire League of Shadows.
Yeah.
And I don't entirely remember how this happened. I just remembered that wherever they were caught on fire.
I think Bruce like catches it on fire or something.
No.
A lot of things just catch on fire in this movie, even if it doesn't make sense.
And so he ends up saving Liam Neeson, who was like kind of rolling down this hill and almost falling over a cliff.
He almost fell off a cliff, yeah.
Yeah, so he saves him, takes him to this local village, then walks away and somehow catches a plane ride back home.
Well, you know Alfred. Although, to be fair, with this movie, it was nice watching this and then realizing, when we do this podcast, for once, the plot is going to make sense.
I know. It actually, there's a plot that flows.
It flows, yeah. Remember Supergirl?
Yeah.
Or Superman 4?
Actually, with those stories,
we get a scene of.
Well, okay, with those movies, I kind of realized something. I was watching this video that was actually discussing Rise of Skywalker, and how the plot is kind of written in reverse, where they have to get somewhere, and in order to get there, they have to find this object. In order to find this object, they have to get something else. And so, basically, it was written with the end goal in mind, and they were just putting these steps along the way in order to get there. That's also how Superman 4 and Supergirl are kind of constructed. Where it feels like the writers knew where they wanted to end up, and they just put in filler steps and MacGuffins in order to get there.
Well, not just that, but also stuff was cut out of the movie.
True, that makes things a little harder to follow.
Yeah. Which again, obviously, this is a much better movie than those. To which your response will be no shit.
Yeah.
So when he gets back to Gotham, we finally get the main thrust of the plot, with Dr. Crane, the main villain.
Yep.
Well, one of the main villains of the movie.
So Dr. Crane, it turns out, is working for Falcone in this huge crime ring. And what he does is Dr. Crane is a psychiatrist. So what he does is he meets with these different criminals that are working for Falcone, gets them declared legally insane so that they instead go to Arkham Asylum instead of prison. And then they can be released later when he goes, oh, they're fine now, they're sane again.
Yeah, basically pulling a R.P. McMurphy from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest there, yeah.
But you find out that Dr. Crane also has kind of this own little side thing going on, where he has this hallucinogen that causes a severe fear response.
Okay, wait.
Anyone who inhales, yeah.
There's a lot of hallucinogens in this movie. I just realized.
I was kind of thinking about that earlier when we were talking about the League of Shadows fight scene.
Yeah, because they got hallucinogens, and then
I think it's supposed to be like the same thing. So, I mean, I guess that makes sense, but
they have different effects, though, don't they? Like,
I mean, not really. When you see the hallucinogen that Bruce takes, the camera gets all shaky, everyone's eyes are glowing, and that's basically what happens when you take the Scarecrow toxin.
Except when you take the Scarecrow toxin, he sees, like, bats and stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Or if you're Rachel, you see, like, worms, or if you're, Dr. Crane, you see Batman's face turn into like a gargoyle or something. But anyway.
Yeah, so Dr. Crane is experimenting with this hallucinogen that, activates this severe fear response in his patients.
That is really clever to do, actually. Just like
Yeah.
create this thing that can like drive them crazy. Because then there's like no way to prove like that he's doing it either. Unless they find the, toxin.
And that also kind of helps him get the whole, hey, they are insane, look at them thing going on.
This is a villain plot that makes sense. When's the last time we had that on this podcast? Fury Road, maybe? I don't know. And then Bruce, he ends up going back into the well.
Yep, because he ends up spotting a bat flying around the mansion. And so he follows the bat, finds the well again, sees this cave, and he gets this great idea. So he had previously talked to Alfred while they were on this plane ride.
Oh, you forgot to mention the huge soundtrack moment when he's down there surrounded by the bats.
Oh, yeah.
Which, I'm trying to remember. Hans Zimmer. Yeah, Hans Zimmer did the music.
Yeah.
For this one, yeah.
Bruce gets the idea that he wants to be a symbol of hope for the good citizens of Gotham, but be a symbol of fear for all the criminals. And so he ends up finding this huge cave underneath Wayne Manor, and he decides that's going to be his base of operations.
Yeah. And it looks like an actual cave, too.
Yeah.
I can't think of any other Batman movie, like, before this, where it looked like an actual cave.
Not even after this. In The Dark Knight, it's like this weird, like, it's got concrete walls and, like, a giant, like, ceiling with lights installed in it.
Because, like, you go back to the Michael Keaton ones, it basically, it looks good, but it looks like a set,
Yeah, it looks like a hole in the ground, basically.
And then the fucking, the Joel Schumacher ones, those look like just...
Yeah.
Those definitely look like sets. Whereas here, it looks like an actual cave, it's got, like, a waterfall and stuff,
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe they shot it on location. I don't know.
So Bruce was declared legally dead because he'd been gone for like 7 years or something.
But
like
that's
that.
another thing. He just vanished. Like, was anybody like asking like, where did this guy go?
That's honestly a great question because the Waynes are pretty big people in Gotham. So he just vanishes and everyone's like, cool, that's fine.
Maybe they just think he like went insane and decided to like go find enlightenment up in Tibet or something.
I mean, that's basically what he did.
That's exactly what he does. Yep. 7 years. Oh my god, wait, did you say he'd been gone for 7 years? 7 years in Tibet. Oh my god. That's exactly what I was referencing too.
Bruce decides that he's going to need a little bit more money for this and maybe some equipment. So he ends up returning to Wayne Enterprises and speaks to its current CEO.
Who's played by Rutger Hauer.
Yeah. And he finds out that the company's going public, but Bruce will be getting some of the shares.
And that's another thing. He just interrupts this board meeting and basically just says, "Hey, I'm alive."
Yeah. He's like, "Hey, I'm alive. I want a job. Let me meet your science guy." And so they end up sending him to Lucius Fox, who's played by Morgan Freeman.
Yeah,
as we
a.k.a.
mentioned.
God.
And Morgan Freeman starts showing him all this stuff, like, "Hey, here's this really cool body armor we have. Here's this, like, magnetic grappling hook that we have." And it's at this point where I want to mention something. Bruce Wayne in this movie is a huge dork. Just, like, massive. Think about it. He's on this plane. He's been gone for at least 7 years. And the first thing he tells his butler is, "I want to run around the city and beat up criminals." He finds a cave, and he's like, "This would be a cool place to do my secret hero work." He then goes to this one guy who develops, like, military-grade technology, and he's like, "Hey, give me some body armor and this grappling hook."
And a tank.
Then he orders 10,000 masks from China in order to make the cowl so that he looks like a bat. And then later on, he finds out that there's this massive...
Where does he just... He just randomly came up with the idea, oh yeah, I'm scared of bats, I'm gonna make everyone else scared of bats, too. And
Yeah.
This kind of does sound a little ridiculous when people put it like that.
And then later on, he finds out that, Fox and Wayne Enterprises developed this massive armored vehicle for military use drives it.
The Tumbler?
It's called, yeah, the Tumbler.
Yeah.
Drives it around, loves it, and then asks him to paint it black. So he can drive it around the city while he dresses as a bat, beating up any criminals he finds along the way. This Bruce Wayne is a dork.
Also, he's kind of a douche in this movie, too.
Oh, definitely. Especially once he decides he needs to hide what he's doing a bit better, so he acts like this
just pretentiously
playboy.
He
Yeah.
He basically just acts like Patrick Bateman. In the, like...
Exactly. Exactly.
Which, again, is why he was cast in this. And one thing I thought was funny, though, when he's, like, talking to Fox about getting the equipment and stuff, and Fox, like, asks him why he wants the stuff, he says he's gonna use it for spelunking.
Spelunking.
Just, he has all the money in the world, he's just gonna buy all this stuff and use it for spelunking. Okay.
I know, and I love that he asks if he's expecting any gunfire while down in the caves.
You know, I don't think that this is the proper way to deal with stress. You know? Just think about it. This is a guy who he's still having like flashbacks to his parents getting killed. And he decides, okay, I'm gonna like.
This Bruce definitely has a few things going on. He's not the most sane person.
Why not just get like a therapist or something? You know.
I mean, would you really want a therapist in Gotham? The most well-known one is Dr. Crane.
Is this some kind of like anti-psychiatry like movie or something?
Also, it's a Scientology movie now.
That's Katie Holmes is in it, so you know, she was in Scientology before until she divorced Tom Cruise. But
yeah.
Anyway, spelunking. I'm gonna use this stuff for spelunking. Okay. I love how Fox doesn't even believe him either.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, right, okay.
He sees right through it. Yeah.
So while all of this is going on, the Gotham police have their own problem. They're trying to track down Falcone's men and kind of try to stop this crime ring. Only problem is like 3/4 of the cops are all working for Falcone, so the investigation's just not going anywhere.
Gordon's basically the Serpico of this movie.
Yeah.
Wait, does that mean this movie is more cynical than Serpico? Jesus Christ. This is the first time he dresses up as Batman, except he doesn't have the full costume yet.
Yeah, he's basically in a ski mask and in, like, the body armor.
He basically just looks like Mr. Incredible when he's, like, just on that night out with Frozone towards the beginning of The Incredibles. And he, like, tries to get Gordon's help, but it doesn't go well, of course.
Yeah. He ends up, like, hurting himself trying to get away. Falling down a fire escape,
looks like
basically.
an idiot in this scene, honestly. This is where he realizes he needs to get a mask.
Yeah.
You know, an actual mask. So they're, like, trying to build a mask, you know. He, like, orders a bunch of them. The first one, like, breaks really easily. And then there was one line that Alfred had. He said, you know, because he's, like, diving through caves and stuff, like, Alfred, like, says to him, in the meantime, may I suggest avoiding landing on your head? Yeah, I thought that line was pretty funny. But yeah,
So yeah, I don't entirely remember when this scene happens, because from what I remember, it just sort of occurs at one point in the movie and then comes back later. But there is a ship that is trying to move a weapon that was designed by Wayne Enterprises.
And it can, like, vaporize water supplies.
Yeah, it's like a microwave emitter that, like, instantly turns water into steam, which is a stupid weapon.
Which, okay, that's, like, the one part of the movie where I'm, like, thinking, okay, that's a little bit too science fiction-y.
And can we talk about how they're moving this thing on a boat?
That's true, yeah. Would it just vaporize the entire ocean? And, like, I thought about that while watching, actually, because I'm like, wait a minute, they're, like, transporting it on a boat.
And then they end up finding the boat. Everyone's dead because supposedly their water has just been removed. or they were killed by whoever took the.
They were trying to find dry land.
And so there's like no one on the boat. The weapon is missing, and now Wynn Enterprises CEO was just kind of sweating about it, but doesn't appear too concerned. He ends up going to Lucius Fox afterwards, asks him about it, and then fires him.
Oh, Batman finally shows up, and I paused it to like see how long it took for him to show up. An hour.
Ooh.
It took about an hour for him to show up. It's like an hour and like 1 minute, and Batman finally shows up.
And so he shows up, basically Falcone and his men are trying to unload some drugs from the dock in Gotham. And he shows up to stop them, and I honestly love this scene. It's got a bit of like that horror movie vibe to it, where everyone's just being taken out one by one.
A little bit, yeah. Which to them, yeah, Batman's kind of scary.
Yeah. I talked to one of my friends about this, but I would love to see a game. It's kind of like Grand Theft Auto, but it takes place in Gotham, and you play as like some like henchman or just some low-level criminal. And every now and again, Batman shows up, and you have to run for your life.
Grand Theft Gotham. Oh man, that would be funny.
Anyway, so they're on the docks, and Batman's basically just taking everyone out one by one, and then he ends the fight by taking Falcone and chaining him to a spotlight and shining it into the sky.
Oh, that's right, yeah, that's how the bat signal becomes a thing, right?
Yeah.
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 I remember that.
And it's just like, that's gotta... Spotlights get hot. Especially if they're running for as long as that one is. Falcone was probably roasting at that point.
Well, who cares? He's Falcone. And there's that one part, you know, like the one guy says, "What the hell are you?" And he says, "I'm Batman."
I'm Batman.
Yeah. Nice coat.
I will say, the one thing that I don't really like about Christian Bale's performance is his Batman voice.
A lot of people have made fun of the voice. I guess we're kind of making fun of it too.
Yeah.
I'll admit.
Here's the thing.
It wasn't quite. I'll admit, in this one, it wasn't quite as goofy as I remembered, although there is one scene which we'll get to.
Because he has this growl that, like, he talks in, but he still talks at, like, a higher pitch. So he kind of sounds like this.
You know what he should do? What he should have done? This is Christian Bale playing him. He could just do his regular voice, his, like, British accent.
Yeah.
And then nobody would recognize him.
British Batman. Fantastic.
Which, that's something I always forget, that sorry, not Bruce Wayne, that Christian Bale isn't an American actor.
Yeah. He does a really good American accent.
He does, yeah. I forget that all the time. Also, this scene. This scene. Bruce Wayne, he's at some hotel.
Oh, okay. So what ends up happening is he's talking to Alfred, and he's like, "I need a better way to hide my identity." And Alfred basically says, "You should try acting like a billionaire." And so he's like, "How do billionaires act?" And he says, "Well, they're always going around with different women, and they buy things that aren't for sale."
And there's these, like, he's at the hotel, there's these women, like, fooling around in this pool.
And one of the hotel staff comes up to him and they're like, "Sir, they're not allowed to swim there. Get them out." And he says, "I'm going to be changing some rules around here," and just buys the hotel on the spot.
Which, this scene, I was like thinking that is like, because Howard Hughes would do shit like this. You know? I don't know if you ever heard the story about how he, there was this, like, flashing sign that he would see outside his windows, like, for some hotel, and when they wouldn't turn it off, he basically just called them and bought the hotel, just so he could get them to fucking turn it off.
That's pretty good. Something that I noticed, that actually comes back later in The Dark Knight, when when he goes to have dinner with Natasha and then ends up meeting Harvey Dent and Rachel there, he mentions that he owns the place.
That's so funny that they actually call back to that.
It's just a nice bit of continuity.
That's nice that there was some actual thought put into the series.
I know. We don't watch a whole lot of those kinds of movies, do we?
Not recently, at least. For the podcast, anyway. But that scene, there was just scenes like that where you're just like, oh my god, he's basically just being a billionaire douchebag,
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I will say, Christian Bale you definitely buy him more as Bruce Wayne than Michael Keaton.
Yeah. Well, I think the problem with Bruce Wayne in like a lot of the Burtonverse things, so shared among Keaton, Val Kilmer, and George Clooney is there's not really a whole lot of Bruce Wayne. It largely focuses on Batman.
Or the villains.
Yeah. Because like I was trying to think back earlier, and I honestly the only scene that I remember of George Clooney playing Bruce Wayne was the scene where he kisses Alfred while he's on his deathbed. Like I don't remember him doing anything else as Bruce Wayne in that movie.
And when he's playing Bruce Wayne, he's basically just playing George Clooney.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you could put, like, Danny Ocean in that movie, and it would be about the fucking same. But basically, my point was, Michael Keaton, like, it seemed like what he was going for was that he's kind of, like, just this grown-up kid in an adult world.
Yeah.
In those movies. Like, it seems like he's really out of place as a billionaire. He's, like, really awkward, which I guess kind of makes sense in a way.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's really Bruce Wayne, necessarily.
But I feel like Christian Bale absolutely nails Bruce Wayne.
And there's some pretty funny scenes, too. Like, again, the hotel. He just buys the fucking hotel. Oh, man. And that moment made me realize that there are some kind of parallels between Bruce Wayne and Howard Hughes a little bit.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes sense, because apparently Christopher Nolan was, before he did this movie, he was planning on doing a biopic about Howard Hughes.
Really?
But then Martin Scorsese did The Aviator, so it ended up, not happening. But yeah, so maybe he might have used some elements of that in this.
I could definitely see that being the case. With the
especially since
story.
like he's just buying a bunch of I guess he doesn't buy Las Vegas like the real Howard Hughes tried to do. But he almost did. He almost bought Las Vegas. Because that's what you can do when you're stupidly rich, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. So what ends up happening then is Falcone was arrested after Batman took him out on the docks.
That is if he didn't die from getting burned to death on the
yeah. And so Falcone ends up having a meeting with Dr. Crane in order to try to get declared insane.
And this is where you finally see the Scarecrow.
Yep, so he puts on that mask, gives Falcone the fear gas, and then basically causes Falcone to go insane.
It doesn't even really feel like a costume. It's just some weird rag.
No, it's just a hood that he puts on.
Yeah. Oh god, I just realized this is kind of the plot of that Mel Brooks movie, High Anxiety. Where Harvey Korman is like trying to pretend that his patients are like insane by scaring them and stuff. It's a little bit different, but it just made me think of that. Yeah, that is an interesting concept though, where he's like using these chemicals to like access their inner fears and stuff. So he's a more psychological villain. Which it makes you wonder, why the hell didn't they do a Scarecrow movie earlier?
Yeah. The thing is, though, and, we're actually pretty close to that scene. I'll go ahead and just talk about it now. I feel like the Scarecrow is actually just a little bit underutilized in this movie, especially towards the end.
He kind of
Because
is.
he has a lot of really good build up, but then, after the first time that Batman gets sprayed by the fear gas, he gets an antidote and it's just a non-problem from there on out.
Yeah, he's also kind of just a minor pawn in the whole scheme, as it's later
Yeah.
found out. Although I will say Cillian Murphy I thought was really good.
He does a fantastic job as the Scarecrow.
He's really unsettling, but he's not overdoing it.
Yeah. And I believe back when we talked about Batman and Robin, we talked about the unmade Batman films. And one of the concepts was for the Scarecrow to appear in the fifth film, to be Nick Cage was one of the options to play.
I know Brad
the
Dourif
Scarecrow.
was one of the options, and you said Nicolas Cage.
And the thing is, in this movie with Killian, I can feel a little bit of Nick Caginess.
There was one scene in particular that I was like watching and thinking, I can see, I can see that.
And so I actually would have been super interested to see Nick Cage's interpretation of the character. He probably would have gone a little bit over the top just because it's Nick Cage, but
and because it's a Batman movie, so
yeah,
the villains are sometimes over the. I always felt like that was kind of the point. Anyway, was that like Batman's super serious and grim, and the villains are completely just over the top and ridiculous.
Yeah, I actually read another post that somebody made. Where they're like, in most superhero fictions, the bad guys are going to dress up in like, blacks or in dark grays, but they can't do that in Batman because Batman already dresses up like that.
So they dress all colorful and stuff.
Exactly.
It's completely reversed. You'd expect Batman to be the bad guy by the normal rule. The way he kept saying Batman's name, I was getting like real like Nick Cage vibes from that.
Yeah.
You mentioned Christian Bale's voice being a bit ridiculous. The scene where I think that's the most exemplified is, well, you know the line. Come on, you know what the fucking line is. Like, everybody fucking quotes. Where were the other drugs going? That was like the one part where I'm thinking, he could have used a different voice.
It's just it feels a little too silly. It feels just a bit out of place.
Although the water vaporizer thing, that's also a little bit silly too. So.
Yeah, that one's very, very over the top and out of place for the rest of the movie.
Although to be fair, not quite as ridiculous as what we got in Batman Forever and Batman and Robin.
True, but those are bad movies.
True, yeah. Wait, those are bad movies? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding, those movies suck. One thing I like to mention, there's this kid that sees Batman.
Oh, yeah.
And he says, "It's you, isn't it?" And I didn't realize until watching it this time, that's Joffrey from Game of Thrones.
Really?
So yeah, Batman interacts with the future ruler of Westeros. A very evil one, too. But anyway, I just thought I'd mention that because I was watching Game of Thrones recently. But anyway, so Scarecrow, he makes Batman hallucinate. And of course, what do you think he sees?
Bats.
No, he sees that birthday party he had when he was 4. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, bats, of course.
And I don't entirely remember exactly how he gets out of there, but he basically gets out of the warehouse that they were fighting in and then calls for Alfred.
He, lights him on fire.
That's right, yeah, he does get lit on fire.
There is so much fucking fire in this movie, I swear.
Okay.
He passes out.
Yeah.
For 2 days, and he just so happens to wake up on his birthday, which I think is Maytember 16th, if I remember right.
Something, yeah.
And Alfred, I think, doesn't Alfred, wake him up?
Yeah, and then Lucius Fox is also there.
And Rachel's also there. Rachel doesn't
Yeah.
really do much in this movie, does she?
Not really. She shows up to scold him every now and again.
I guess she interacts with Dr. Crane a few times.
Yeah.
Also, another thing I found funny, though, was that I was watching this movie a few days ago and it was really rainy.
Yeah.
And there is so much rain in this movie. Like, there are so many rainy scenes in this movie. Because, again, you gotta make sure it's dramatic. Or who knows, maybe Gene Kelly is singing and dancing somewhere. Morgan Freeman, he's investigating that water vaporizer thing.
Yeah,
I like how we just called him Morgan Freeman during this. He's basically just playing Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, true. So he ends up making the antidote for the fear gas, thereby taking out any of the power that Scarecrow would actually have over Batman.
I think he talks to Rutger Hauer about the water vaporizer or something.
Yeah, because Rutger comes up and he's like, "Hey, do you know about this water vaporizer?"
And that's another thing. We've never referred to Rutger Hauer by his character's name.
I don't even remember what his character's name is.
I don't either. For me, whenever I see him in a movie, I think either he's Rutger Hauer or Roy Batty. Those are the only two names I associate with Rutger Hauer. But he ends up getting fired by Rutger Hauer. Scarecrow, the psychopharmacologist, studying crazy farm animals. But we get the Nicolas Cage scene. Oh yeah, here we go. Okay, Batman ends up spraying. Sorry, were you gonna make a comment about that?
No, I didn't have anything to add, but yeah, it is definitely a Nick Cage scene.
Yeah, he acts sort of like Nicolas Cage in that scene. Yeah.
He's here. Who? The Batman.
Batman sprays Scarecrow with his own stuff, and he starts hallucinating. He basically just sees a really demonic Batman.
Yeah,
or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I think, like you said it earlier, he just looks like a gargoyle.
Yeah, basically. Which that's one of. For the most part, the visual effects in this I think hold up, but that one looks a little bit silly.
Yeah, it looks a bit like a rubber suit.
It does. Yeah, it doesn't really look real. Which I guess it's supposed to be his mask.
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't really look very convincing. And then Scarecrow ends up admitting he works for
Ra's al Ghul.
Ra's al Ghul, who is dead. Or not? Wait, what?
See, that's supposed to be a plot twist, but it ends up not really being that much of a plot twist.
I mean, when I first saw this movie, I wasn't expecting that.
It might be just because, I think everyone knows that Liam Neeson plays Al Ghul.
They basically pulled a Alec Trevelyan on him in Goldeneye or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
Also, real quick, that shot of Batman running down the hallways of the insane asylum while there's bats flying everywhere, that looks fucking awesome.
Yeah. It is a very good scene.
And Batman's just driving this fucking thing across rooftops, too.
I forgot about that scene for a second, because the cops are trying to chase him down. So he drives onto the roof of, a parking ramp, and then just starts jumping the car across the rooftops.
Which is a little bit ridiculous, but I don't know, whatever.
It's a fun enough scene that I can excuse it.
It's fun, yeah. I'm really only noticing that some of this seems a little bit silly now that I'm actually thinking about some of it. But while watching it, I wasn't really thinking about that. I was just trying to make sure I get all the plot points written down.
Yeah.
And thankfully, this movie has a coherent plot, so that wasn't very hard.
It's so lovely.
Yeah.
So, Batman ends up taking Rachel back to the Batcave, where they treat her for the toxin. And then Gordon ends up finding out that the Scarecrow has poisoned the water supply
They
with the fear
poisoned the
toxin.
water hole.
But then it is immediately turned into a non-issue because they're like, well, it doesn't actually affect you unless you inhale it.
That does kind of happen because Batman Returns, a few of Penguin's plots, they just sort of start and then they're just solved very quickly.
Yeah.
So this isn't a new thing for Batman. There was another line I wanted to highlight where Bruce Wayne says something like, I'm not exactly an attention seeker or whatever, and then Alfred turns on the TV or whatever, and there's footage of the Batmobile just driving and wrecking things, and then Alfred says, what do you call that? And then Bruce Wayne says, damn good television. I thought that was pretty funny.
And so right after all of this,
it's his birthday. It's all happening on his birthday, too.
Yeah, and so after all of these action scenes, suddenly he's just got to get dressed and go to his birthday party.
Yep. Just a bunch of rich assholes at his birthday party, basically. And guess who shows up?
None other than Liam Neeson.
Yep, Qui-Gon. Ra's al Ghul shows up.
And something that I want to point out really quick. So, how the scene goes is he sees Roz, he kicks everyone out of the party. Then there's this big fight where then Wayne Manor catches on fire.
Yeah.
On this night where all this crazy stuff goes down and there's ninjas everywhere destroying the city. This newspaper headline just states that Bruce Wayne...
That's towards the end. We'll get to that.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say what it is because it's so silly that in the midst of all of this, it basically just says he threw a tantrum and burned his house down.
The exact headline, I wrote it down. It's drunken billionaire burns down home.
Exactly. It's you don't think that this could possibly connect it to the ninjas and the leader of the ninjas who was at the mansion for a birthday party at this time.
I guess they didn't see the ninja. There weren't really any eyewitnesses.
True.
But anyway,
True.
That headline made me really laugh. But yeah, Liam Neeson, he's there. And we haven't really talked too much about his actual motivations and stuff.
Yeah.
In this. And I actually found Ra's al Ghul a really interesting character in this.
He is.
Because he has really complex motives, Ra's al Ghul, he is the main villain, but he's more morally gray than a lot of other Batman villains are.
Because technically in this, his goals are pretty similar to Batman's. He wants to rid Gotham and then, the rest of the world of crime. But he's doing it in a way that doesn't really align with how Batman thinks it should be done.
Detestable methods.
Yeah.
He's basically a guy who thinks he's doing the right thing, but he doesn't really care who he has to kill to do it. I think the writer of the movie compared him a bit to Osama bin Laden.
Huh.
Which kind of makes sense, because he's kind of a terrorist in a way.
Yeah.
Because he's basically just when he feels like a society is too corrupt and stuff, he just has this group to just swoop in and just destroy it and start from scratch, which that's gonna have problems,
Yeah.
The exact quote, he says, every time a civilization reaches the pinnacle of its decadence, we return to restore the balance. Oh god, that sounds like Thanos! That sounds like Thanos!
It does. I was about to say, that's actually interesting, because that implies the League of Shadows has been around for a really long time.
They mentioned that they helped destroy Rome.
Yeah. So that's just an interesting concept for a group of villains that just gets wiped out in this movie and never shows up again.
They get wiped out pretty easily in this, actually.
Now, one thing real quick, since we're talking about Ra's al Ghul, is the animated series version of Ra's is quite a bit different than in this one. They pronounce it differently. They call him Ra's al Ghul. And so in the animated series, he's like a huge part of his motivation is finding this thing called the I think it's called the Lazarus Pit or the Pit of Lazarus,
Oh my
which
god, I
is
remember that.
yeah, which is basically a way to gain eternal life. And basically, throughout the animated series, it's kind of shown that he's kind of like in this movie, basically an antithesis to Batman.
Yeah, because basically
Where
their
they
whole
have
disagreement is that he feels Batman is too compassionate,
Yeah,
and he shouldn't show mercy to the people they deem evil, basically.
yeah,
Whereas Batman, he thinks that if they do that, it just makes them just like them. Which that's a really interesting dynamic for them to do. Basically, Batman and
Yeah.
then the dark side of Batman.
And so that's one thing that, like, a complaint that I kind of had before watching it was I felt like having Ra's al Ghul be the first villain that Batman fights. It seems like you're playing the character a bit too fast. After watching it, I think it was they did a pretty good job in this, especially with Liam Neeson.
I thought it was a good choice, yeah.
I still feel like having him be like the last villain still would have been a great choice, though. Basically, to have Batman fight his equal at the very end of the
I guess
series.
that kind of makes sense, yeah. But
Plus, then
instead
that would
he
actually
fights
be
Bane, who's like... But anyway,
yeah.
we'll get to that eventually.
Anyway, one last thing on that real quick is that would actually be kind of a cool thing to do. Have Liam Neeson show up in the first movie as, the character at the very beginning. And then have him show up at the very end of the third movie and be like, hey, I've been here waiting for you, let's fight.
That would have been a good twist, and there would have been set up instead of what they actually did.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
This also really just shows me how much of a missed opportunity, going off on a different tangent, how much of a missed opportunity Man with the Golden Gun was. Because in that one, they were trying to have Scaramanga be the dark side of Bond. But obviously, it didn't work very well.
No.
It did not. But anyway. And another thing also with the whole Batman and Ra's al Ghul it's dynamic. It's kind of this contrast between a more cynical worldview and like a more optimistic worldview,
Yeah.
where Batman's a little more optimistic than Ra's al Ghul is, There got to be a certain point where I was starting to think, I think there's too many characters in this.
There is a lot of people that the movie wants you to follow.
Gordon really gets the shaft in this one. He's like not really. He has barely anything to do with the main plot. Because
you have Gordon, then you have kind of as the villains, you have Joe Chill at the very beginning. Then you have Dr. Crane. Then you have Ra's al Ghul. Then you have Falcone.
Oh God, there's three
villains.
Keep
up with.
There's three main villains basically.
You also have to keep up with Rachel and Bruce's plot
that's
line.
another thing.
You got Alfred.
Wait a second. That's another thing. They basically go the route of, wait, this guy's the bad guy. No. This guy's actually the bad guy. No. This guy is the bad guy.
They kind of do, because they build up Falcone as the big bad a little bit. And then they're like, well, he's taken care of. Dr. Crane's the next guy. Take care of him. Oh, wait, Ra's al Ghul's back. It's
kind of in a descending order of, like, evil, too. Where Falcone's the most evil, and then, like, Ra's al Ghul is, like, the least evil, because he has at least a few good intentions. Obviously, goes about it the wrong way.
Anyway.
Moving on.
So Ra's al Ghul and Bruce have this fight in Wayne Manor. Yeah.
He drunkenly burns it down. That's another thing. Wait, we forgot to mention this. Oh my God, I can't believe we forgot to mention this. There's like a bunch of people at his birthday party, and he kicks them out by pretending to be drunk and insulting them.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty funny.
And I think while Ra's is confronting Bruce at this point, he mentions that he knows that he's Batman.
I cannot figure out how he would know that.
And my favorite line
was just going around using ninja moves to fight people. I wonder who that is.
And I think my favorite line in that whole thing is when Reyes goes, "I see you took what I said about theatricality literally."
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Liam Neeson actually might be the best part of this movie now that I think about it.
Honestly, he does a very good job.
He's really good at it. You know, he gets a lot of the more philosophical dialogue too.
Yeah.
Alfred gets some good dialogue as well, though. But yeah.
So they end up having a small fight in the manor, and then like a beam falls on top of Bruce, and Reyes just kind of leaves him be, and then goes off to, I guess, destroy the rest of the city.
He's gonna spread the gas around, I guess.
Yep.
He says,
Time to spread the word. And the word is panic.
and Gordon gets to drive the Batmobile.
And you can tell he's just having the time of his life doing that.
I mean, earlier he said, "I want to get me one of those," and then he kind of does. Or at least,
one thing that's kind of fun.
Anyway.
One thing that's kind of fun thinking about it is just how much foreshadowing there is throughout this movie.
Oh my god, yeah. Because we keep alluding to stuff that happens in later entries.
Yeah,
I've noticed.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Ra's al Ghul ends up freeing. I think it's Ra's. He ends up freeing a lot of the people from Arkham Asylum, and so they also start causing a lot more havoc throughout the city.
Yeah.
Bruce is saved by Alfred. They take a trip back to the Batcave so he can get suited up as Batman. And then he basically enters in the area with the antidote and starts to fight off the members of the League of Shadows.
Oh, also another thing is Scarecrow basically quotes FDR at one point. He says, "Nothing to fear but fear itself." And Batman, he saves Rachel and Joffrey, which wait a minute, you know what that means? That means that they saved one of the most evil villains from Game of Thrones.
That's pretty good.
So Batman is responsible for a lot of death and misery in Westeros as a result. But anyway, he ends up telling Rachel that, basically indirectly, that he's Batman. He quotes something that she said earlier in the movie. I can't remember the exact line.
It's not what's on the outside that counts, basically.
But it's what's underneath. Yes. That's it. Yeah, okay. Thank you. I didn't write it down. Also, another thing. Okay, there are riots going on. People are wearing masks. And there's toxins being spread around. Does this seem familiar?
I'm trying to think.
I'll give you, 2 years ago,
Oh.
Not to get topical, but this movie kind of predicted 2020.
Yeah, a little bit.
But basically the plot, it ends up failing. I think you mentioned that the gas doesn't work unless you inhale the water, is that right?
Yeah, you would have to inhale it as a vapor, which is part of the reason why Ra's al Ghul and his men have stolen that
the water
sci-fi
vaporizer,
weapon.
Yes. Yep. That's right. That's why they stole the water vaporizer. Things make sense. Things add up. This is a plot which makes sense.
And so Ra's is kind of just chilling out on a train, just going around the city, watching things go down. And then Batman shows up to take him on, and then whatever henchman he has.
I feel like we've said that so many times, and then Batman shows up.
I feel like it's how it feels though. Things are happening, then Batman shows up, and then things are all right again.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a train fight between Batman and Ra's al Ghul. And I must say, I think all the fights in this are pretty good.
Oh yeah, they're very well choreographed.
That was definitely one huge improvement over the older Batman movies. Is the fight choreography in this? I think is better than the older ones.
Also, one thing that I noticed in this that's a bit of a carryover from the older movies is that the Batman like mask is connected to the suit, so he can't really turn his neck.
Right, yeah, that's
So
right.
he still has to do the whole turn my entire body thing to see.
That's true, yeah, huh.
Which is something that they fix in The Dark Knight, thankfully. Because some of the fight scenes do look a bit silly, with him having to basically turn his entire upper torso to look around.
Not as silly as Batman Forever or Batman and Robin,
True.
obviously. Oh, the
True.
fucking ice hockey fight at the beginning of Batman and Robin. Jesus.
Anyway, so they have the fight on the train, and so the train is just kind of going out of control, and then Batman has Gordon drive to part of the bridge and blow it up using Batman missiles.
Again,
which
things
then-
are starting to make sense.
Yep. And then we get something that's actually pretty interesting, I think. So Batman beats Ra's in the fight, and then Ra's al Ghul is like, "You're not gonna kill me. I know you. You're too compassionate for that." And then Batman says, "I'm not going to kill you, but I don't have to save you," and jumps out the back of the train,
Yeah,
allowing the train to derail and kill Ra's al Ghul.
he basically kills him. I mean,
Yeah. Because let's think about it. It was part of Batman's plan to have Gordon blow up the part of the bridge that the train was on. He keeps Ra's al Ghul in the train long enough that it will kill him if it crashes. And then he dips out and leaves while the train crashes, killing Ra's al Ghul.
he basically kills him, yeah.
Exactly. It was just not within his own two hands, so I guess it's fine.
Which I know you've complained about that in some of the Batman adaptations.
Yeah.
That he just straight up kills people.
Yeah. And so, I mean, this one's a bit weird because it's kind of like secondhand. You could make the argument that technically Gordon killed him.
It's not like
Since
in
he was the one that
Keaton
derailed,
ones.
but
It's not like in the Keaton ones where he just straight up kills the Joker and
it's not like the Ben Affleck one where he has machine guns on the
oh
Batmobile
god, oh
and
fuck
mows
me.
down people.
Fuck me. Yeah, because for some reason Zack Snyder has some obsession with Frank Miller. I know some people, they complain about this. You know, I'm not as like, I'm probably not as purist about stuff like that. Although I do think, come on, Batman doesn't use machine guns. Are you fucking kidding me? But anyway, yeah. Then you get the headline of
Drunken billionaire burns down house.
and maybe somewhere in that news story it says, oh, and some ninjas were noticed leaving.
Yeah, can we talk about a second how that was like front page news and not like the massive terrorist attack?
It wasn't front page news, no.
I thought it was.
Front page was like the story about Batman, and then Alfred says, turn to page 8 and you'll find Bruce Wayne.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't on the front page.
Yeah.
Oh. It would be hilarious if it was. Just, oh, there's all this chaos going in Gotham, but no, Bruce Wayne burned his house down because he was drunk. And he has money.
And then, the very next day, there's a meeting at Wayne Enterprises that's being led by Lucius Fox.
Doesn't Rutger Hauer get fired?
Yep, well, he's like, what's going on? And then it's basically revealed that Bruce Wayne basically bought out the company.
That's right. He bought out his own fucking, or no, he doesn't own the company yet. Okay.
Yeah, no, he didn't own the company, but he bought so many shares that he was basically in charge of the company, fired Rutger, and put Lucius Fox in charge.
Let's see. Who do we choose to run this company? God or an evil android?
All right, well, let's think about this choice just for a quick second here. So, obviously, there's some favoritism. You know, Lucius Fox made basically all the Batman gear.
Well, they don't know that.
But here's the thing. Does he have any idea how to run a company? Does Lucius Fox know everything that he would need to be the CEO?
Fuck you, it's Morgan Freeman.
And it looks like, it works out in the end, but, was there any indication that he would have been a good CEO for the company?
Fuck you. He's Morgan Freeman. But
Anyway, Bruce decides that it's time to rebuild Wayne Manor after burning it down while drunk.
he could just go. He probably just lives in that hotel that he owns while he's waiting for it to be rebuilt. Because he owns a. What does he even do with that hotel?
I guess he just makes a ton of money off of that.
God, that's so funny. Does he even know how to run a hotel? That's the other question that should be asked. Should Bruce Wayne be running a hotel?
Is he qualified to run the hotel business? Does he own more than one hotel? Like, is it a franchise hotel? Did he buy the entire franchise?
I'm starting to think that Bruce Wayne doesn't make very good decisions. How does he deal with stress? Oh, he beats up criminals. Some girls are playing in a pool when they're not allowed to. Oh, just buy the whole hotel.
Buy the hotel and change the rules. Anyway,
there's an android running your corporation. Oh, replace him with Morgan Freeman.
Anyway,
well, that was a good decision, but I don't know about the other ones. So.
He ends up making amends with Rachel, who says that, yeah, I'd be with you, but you're Batman, so no.
Which, again, I can't understand why she was recast. Anyway, and the ending basically sets up the next movie.
Yep. So Batman meets Gordon on the rooftop, who recently just made the bat signal.
Yeah. Oh, and another thing we forgot to mention, he's only Sergeant Gordon in this movie.
Well, he becomes lieutenant at the end of the movie. He's not commissioner yet.
But still, he's not Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah.
At least not yet, anyway.
And so he kind of talks to Batman about how there's always like a cause and effect thing with the cops and the criminals. So like the cops get bulletproof armor, they get armor-piercing rounds, that sort of thing. And he says, I wonder what's going to happen having Batman around. And he mentions that there's this new criminal on the rise who leaves a calling card that's a Joker card.
A Joker card, yep.
Yep.
Which means that the next one will have Mr. Freeze in it.
And so I think the only real problem I have with this ending is they're basically establishing that the Joker is a well-known criminal. But the problem with that is that the Dark Knight basically treats him as this unknown character that came out of nowhere.
But yeah, that's the end of Batman Begins.
Yeah, very good movie, very enjoyable.
Yeah, it does still feel like setup though.
Yeah,
being the first movie, it has to set up everything, which, to be fair, we hadn't really seen that before, so, we hadn't really seen a screen adaptation of the Batman origin story yet, and I thought it did that pretty well.
It does.
And it generally, it takes it very seriously, and it does add a few moments of humor in there as well.
Yeah. It takes it seriously, but it's not done in an edgy way like Zack Snyder did with his Batman
does come
stuff.
Across as a little bit pretentious a few times, but
yeah,
it doesn't
it doesn't devolve into Zack Snyder.
But maybe part of that is just because I've seen so many Christopher Nolan movies, so now I know a lot of the tropes,
Yeah.
But this one generally, I think, plays to his strengths more, I thought, for the most part, the performances were really good, especially Christian Bale and Liam Neeson and Michael Caine. I thought those were the three. I feel like Gary Oldman should have gotten a little more to do.
Yeah.
Which he does in the next one. He does in the next one. I think the only cast member that really just does not feel... I think we've mentioned this already, but Katie Holmes just feels really out of place, out of her depth in this one.
She doesn't really add anything to the movie either. You could take out all of the scenes with Rachel, and it would be the same movie.
She has like even less function in this movie than Mariel Hemingway did in Superman 4. To be quite honest.
Yeah. Overall, very good movie.
I think the special effects were good. It's very, on a technical level, it's very competently made.
Yeah.
The story flows pretty well, although it does feel a bit jarring with some of the flashbacks at the beginning. But eventually it settles in, and things pay off, I think, you know.
Yep.
There's so many movies we've done where just it stops, you know? Nothing pays off, nothing adds up, so... and this one did, so there's that. I think the music score is pretty good by Hans Zimmer. We didn't really talk about that as much.
The score is really good.
But I think it's just because it's not as iconic as the Danny Elfman stuff.
Because when I think of Batman music, I do think of the theme from the original.
Which, to be fair, that's like one of the greatest music scores of all time.
Yeah.
Minus the Prince stuff. When you compare this to the other Batman movies, I definitely think this is better than the Joel Schumacher ones. Obviously.
For sure.
I think it's better than Batman Returns, but I'm not sure if I like it more than the 1989 one.
I think I prefer the 1989 one to this.
I think the 1989 one, I think the thing with that one is I think that one found a good balance between being serious and being funny.
Yeah.
This one, most of it's very serious.
And I feel like the flow of the story works just a bit better in the 1989 one.
It's a lot quicker paced.
Yeah. It feels a lot tighter.
It doesn't have the same emotional depths as this one does, or the same psychological depth, but I think it's a more entertaining movie.
Yeah. It's easier just to put on Batman and watch that than this.
Like, if I was going to watch one right now, I'd put that one on, to be honest.
Yeah.
Also, Jack Nicholson. I mean, Jack Nicholson in that movie is amazing.
Just a fantastic role.
Although I will say, I do think Gary Oldman's a better Gordon than Pat Hingle was. Pat Hingle doesn't really do much in that movie.
Yeah. I honestly don't remember Gordon.
He doesn't really do anything in that movie, or any of them, really. Like, I think it does a better job with the supporting cast than...
Yeah.
You know... Well, except maybe Katie Holmes. Although, I don't know, Kim Basinger wasn't, like, amazing in that movie. The action scenes, I think, are definitely better in this one.
They're all very well made, especially the fight at the end between Batman and Ra's.
That is one weakness with the Tim Burton one, is the action scenes in the first one. I think even Tim Burton admitted he wasn't very good at shooting action scenes yet. And after thinking about it, I think Christian Bale is better than Michael Keaton was, honestly.
Yeah, especially with the portrayal of Bruce Wayne.
As Bruce Wayne, I think he's better. Whereas Michael Keaton, I think, was kind of awkward as Bruce Wayne.
Yeah. Plus, I feel like those movies focused a lot more on Batman over Bruce Wayne.
They do, yeah. And also just more focus on the villains, too. This one, there's more focus on Batman. So... You could argue that Batman is better in this one, but the villains in the older ones, at least Batman and Batman Returns, are better.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely a lot more focus on the Joker in the 1989 one.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I like that one, just because I love Jack Nicholson, so... because he's one of my favorite actors, so I'll watch just about anything he's in. Because for a while, the 1989 one was Batman for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Until the Nolan trilogy, at least. Then those became Batman. Because I didn't see the Tim Burton ones until after I'd seen the Nolan ones, if I remember right.
How I ended up watching it was I saw The Dark Knight was the first Batman movie I saw. Then after that, I think I saw Batman v Superman. And then after that, it was the Tim Burton Batman.
I think I saw all of them before I saw Batman v Superman. Gosh, that would not be a good one to start with. I definitely think Michael Keaton and Christian Bale are better than Ben Affleck as
Oh yeah,
Batman.
oh yeah.
Although I thought Ben Affleck was okay as Bruce Wayne.
He did a decent enough job with the Batman. Wasn't a fantastic Bruce Wayne, but he was good.
I guess I haven't seen the new one yet, but I guess from what we've done, Christian Bale might be the best one.
I think so, yeah. He just strikes this good balance between Bruce Wayne and Batman.
And I'm saying this as a person, I'm not even the biggest fan of Christian Bale, to be honest, but maybe that's just because of who he is as a person, but rather than, because as an actor, I think he's competent, but just...
Yeah.
I think it's because I read somewhere that he doesn't really like acting. He just does it because it's a job for him, but I don't know. Maybe that was part of it. But of the Batmans we've done, I would say he's probably the best Batman.
Yeah.
I like Michael Keaton. I think Michael Keaton was better as Bruce Wayne in Batman Returns.
Yeah, he definitely was. He kind of got his footing.
He seemed a little more settled into the role. Although I will say about Michael Keaton, considering what he had done before he was in Batman, which was mostly comedies, he did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Because you would never have expected Michael Keaton to be even close to a decent Bruce Wayne,
Yeah.
Because before that, he was doing Beetlejuice and stuff. So I do probably enjoy the 1989 Batman movie slightly more than Batman Begins.
Yeah.
But overall, at least from what my recollection is, I haven't rewatched it yet. I remember The Dark Knight being the best Batman movie.
So far, I think I'd agree. I don't know if...
I'll have to rewatch it, but when I last saw it, I thought it was the best one.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe the next movies in Robert Pattinson's trilogy will be better, but
you never
I think
know.
for right now, The Dark Knight is the best.
I haven't seen the Robert Pattinson one yet. And I also haven't rewatched Dark Knight Rises yet, so who knows? Maybe that one will become my favorite.
I doubt it.
Is there anybody out there who thinks Dark Knight Rises is the best Batman movie?
Actually, he doesn't think it's the best movie, but I actually do have a friend that really enjoys Dark Knight Rises.
There are people that like it. When it came out, people loved it. It's just since then people have kind of just nitpicked it to death. So
yeah, one of the things that I complain about The Dark Knight Rises is I hate Bane's voice.
You haven't seen the whole thing.
I've heard enough of the voice to know I hate the voice, and that's one of the things that he actually defends about the movie. He actually really likes Bane's voice.
Yeah, his voice that makes him sound like Sean Connery. If Max were here, he would do a perfect imitation of it. Which he did do during the Fury Road podcast.
Yeah.
His imitation of it is spot on, actually.
From what I remember, it is pretty good, yeah.
Basically, okay, Batman Begins, pretty good movie. I think it's pretty good. It's really, really good. It's definitely in the top 5 Batman movies. Maybe top 3. Yeah, top 3. I'd say it's in the top 3. Dark Knight would be number 1.
I'd have to think about that a little bit.
Dark Knight would be number 1. Live action, at least. Dark Knight would be number 1. Then the 1989 one. Then this one.
Honestly, I might put Batman Returns over this one.
Really? Huh?
Yeah. Because at least from what I remember from the last time I watched Batman Returns, which was for the podcast.
Batman Returns is pretty entertaining, to be fair.
I honestly think I think I would put Batman Returns over this.
Batman Returns does have Christopher Walken in it, to be fair.
And it's got Danny DeVito.
Michelle Pfeiffer's pretty good in that, too.
Yeah.
I feel like the Batman Returns, the story's a bit of a mess, though.
It can be, yeah.
It's an entertaining movie, but I don't think it's better than Batman Begins. And I definitely don't think it's better than the 1989 Batman.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'd agree with your top two.
I played this stinking city like a hop from hell. It's a very quotable movie, too, I'll give it that. Really, all the Batman movies are, you know.
Yeah, especially the villains.
Yeah, the villains, yep. This town needs an enema. So, you may not believe this, but this movie got a Razzie nomination.
Really? Was it for Katie Holmes?
Yes. Yep. Are you gonna dispute this, or...
No.
Okay. She did lose to Paris Hilton for the House of Wax remake.
Huh.
I've not seen very many Paris Hilton movies, so I can't really vouch for that.
I don't think I've seen any Paris Hilton films.
From what I've heard, we're probably both better off. But anyway, one thing I do remember hearing about the House of Wax remake, though, is that for the marketing, one of the things they did was they really advertised the hell out of the fact Paris Hilton dies in the movie. They really wanted people to go see it because Paris Hilton dies in the movie.
That's pretty funny.
Oh, man. Also, oh my god, that is so mean-spirited, though.
Yeah.
It was nominated for an Academy Award, though. It didn't just get Razzie nominated.
Hmm.
Try and guess what it was nominated for. It only got one.
My first guess would be special effects.
Excuse
My
me.
next guess would be story.
Didn't get either of those. It got Best Cinematography.
Yeah, I can see that.
Which makes sense, yeah. Maybe it didn't get the visual effects nomination because of the rubber bat face. It was nominated for a ton of Saturn Awards. And it won in the categories of Best Fantasy Film.
Really?
I don't know if I classify this fantasy.
I would technically classify it as comic book movie, but I guess that just wasn't as big of a genre in 2005 as it is now.
Yeah. What would it have competed against in 2005?
True.
The Fantastic Four movie? Jesus Christ.
When did Spider-Man 3 come out?
That was 2007.
Also
very heady competition for Batman Begins. And then they give it to Spider-Man 3 because, hey, the dance moves are pretty good. It won Best Screenplay and Best Actor for Christian Bale. It was nominated for, but did not win, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor for Liam Neeson, Best Supporting Actress for Katie Holmes.
Interesting.
Best Costume, that would make sense. Best Score.
Yeah.
And Best Visual Effects. Most of those make sense, except for Katie Holmes.
Yeah, that's the outlier.
Then again, Kate Bosworth got a Saturn nomination for Superman Returns, and also got a Razzie nomination.
The film has a body count of 27 people.
27. I'm gonna guess most of them were killed by either Ra's al Ghul or the Scarecrow.
I'd imagine. I wonder how many of those are... How many ninjas died at the beginning of the movie?
I'm not gonna go back and count. I don't care. A lot of people died. Yep. Okay, it's a comic book movie. That happens. How many people died in Endgame?
True. How many people died in Infinity War?
Infinity War, like half of everything dies. After criticizing the previous Batman movies, Roger Ebert gave this one 4 out of 4 stars.
Yeah, that's good. Real quick, what about the one guy that said Batman Forever is the gold standard?
I'll get to him in a minute. This is Roger Ebert's quote. Batman Begins at last penetrates to the dark and troubled depths of the Batman legend, creating a superhero who, if not plausible, is at least persuasive as a man driven to dress like a bat and become a vigilante. The movie is not realistic, because how could it be, but it acts as if it is. It got 2 thumbs up from him and Richard Roeper on their show, with Roeper calling it the best Batman movie ever by far. Although that might have changed with the next one, because a lot of people say that one's the best one. Rex Reed, who we haven't talked about him on here, but he's insane. One of the worst movie critics ever, if you ask me.
Really?
He is just, he's awful. He was apparently not a fan of this movie, or a lot of things for that matter. In his very eloquent and persuasive review, he said, "Batman Begins is for morons." Very classy. Leonard Maltin gave it 3 out of 4 stars, which is the same star rating he gave Batman Forever.
Oh, that's painful. How do you award Batman Forever and Batman Begins with the same score?
And yeah, this is the guy who I always bring up in these podcasts.
He's my mortal enemy. Is he alive?
He is, yeah. I don't know if
I'm gonna fist fight him someday.
who was the VHS critic that called it? Pat Collins or something?
Oh, I think so, yeah.
Are they your mortal enemies?
Yeah, I'm building an enemy list, and it's only comprised of people that liked Batman Forever.
So I guess I'm not on. Wait, so your enemy list is just people who like Batman Forever?
Yes, that is the extent of the list.
That means Gene Siskel would be on there as well, apparently.
Yep. I'll fight him from beyond the grave.
I will admit, though, I actually used to like Batman Forever. Before we did the podcast, I'd seen it before, and I actually remembered liking it, although that mostly was probably just down to Jim Carrey being in it. But yeah, I don't now, so I guess I'm safe from your wrath. George Washington likes Batman Forever. What do you think of that?
It's time to kill George Washington. America was a mistake.
Abraham Lincoln once said 7 years ago there was a great movie called Batman Forever. Apparently Blade Runner was a huge inspiration on this movie.
Really?
Nolan had it screened to show what he wanted the production design to look like.
It's kind of like when Stanley Kubrick.
Stanley Kubrick, yeah. He wanted
Eraserhead.
Eraserhead, yeah.
How did I forget Stanley Kubrick's name?
My favorite director of all time, and you forgot his fucking name. Jesus Christ. Makes sense, though, because like you look at Blade Runner and you look at Batman Begins, they both are set in these really just dystopian-looking cities, you know? There's so much crime and just, you know... Although, Blade Runner, there's more neon and, like, huge flashing signs. So.
It's a lot more futuristic in Blade Runner.
Which is funny, because it takes place in, like, 2019. 3 years ago, that's what it looked like in LA.
I love it when movies set themselves in the future, and then we hit that point.
What's hilarious is that this year is the year that Soylent Green took place in.
Really?
Yep. You're gonna be eating some weird green squares or something soon that might be made of people. Some of the alternate casting choices. This should be interesting.
Ooh, my favorite.
Some of the alternate casting choices for Batman / Bruce Wayne included Cillian Murphy, apparently, before he was cast as the Scarecrow. Henry Cavill.
Huh.
That would have been interesting. And I could actually kind of see that.
I could see that. I still think that casting Henry Cavill as Superman is a great choice. He looks like him.
He does, yeah.
and I think he can act. It's just that you needed a better writer.
Zack Snyder was not the right,
Yeah.
Billy Crudup, I don't know how his name's pronounced, but he played another Zack Snyder movie. He played Dr. Manhattan in Watchmen.
Really? I don't know if I could see him as Batman.
Batman would have looked very blue. Jake Gyllenhaal, or Gyllenhaal, however you actually pronounce
I think it's
it.
Gyllenhaal.
I actually saw an interview, and he said it was pronounced something like Gyllenhaal or something, because it's Swedish, but everybody pronounced it Gyllenhaal, so, but whatever. He was considered to play Batman.
No, I don't like that.
I do really like him as an actor.
Same, but he just would not have been a good Batman.
I could see him as Scarecrow. I think he could play a villain in a Batman movie. He played Mysterio in the different superhero villain. A bunch of people I haven't heard of. Heath Ledger. Now that's interesting.
That is very interesting. I feel like that interpretation of Batman would have been closer, actually, to what they did with the Robert Pattinson one.
Huh.
Just kind of like the depressed Batman.
Josh Hartnett. No, that wouldn't have worked. Or Ashton Kutcher.
No.
No. And David Duchovny again.
No!
He was considered again to play Batman after being considered in Batman and Robin, I think.
I like David Duchovny enough. You know, I love the X-Files. He's great in that.
He is, yeah. Mulder.
But no, I don't want him to play Batman.
I think he's a little bit too eccentric to play Batman.
Yeah.
Granted, Christian Bale's pretty eccentric, though. So.
True.
But anyway, David Duchovny doesn't really give me the vibe of rich douchebag.
No, not really. He would have been a very awkward Bruce Wayne.
I do think David Duchovny could have done Scarecrow, though. After thinking about it. I think that would have worked, but...
Yeah.
Anthony Hopkins was offered the role of Alfred, but declined.
That would have been interesting.
Which I think could have worked, actually.
Yeah.
I couldn't really find why he turned it down, but oh well.
It might be like he was wary of doing a superhero movie.
At least before he was in Thor.
Yeah.
Other actors considered for the part of Dr. Crane / the Scarecrow. Here's some interesting choices. Marilyn Manson.
No.
That would have been terrifying.
I don't like that.
Paul Bettany.
I could see it.
That would be interesting, yeah. Ewan McGregor.
I don't know.
Christopher Eccleston was considered. He was the 9th Doctor on Doctor Who, yeah. And he actually almost got the part.
I think I could see. I think I could see that.
I think he would have been pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say. I still feel like Killian would have done a better job.
He did do a better job because he was actually cast.
Okay, true.
He did better in their auditions and stuff, so there's a reason he was cast. But yeah, alternate casting choices for Ra's al Ghul included Viggo Mortensen, who turned it down, which I think he could have done it.
Yeah.
Daniel Day-Lewis, who probably turned it down, because he was apparently really selective about his film projects. Probably didn't want to commit to a franchise either. So maybe that was it. And Guy Pearce, who he didn't get the role because he was too young.
I definitely feel like Liam Neeson was like the best choice for that.
Gary Oldman was the original choice.
Yep.
but he was recast because Chris Cooper backed out. Because Chris Cooper was supposed to be Gordon, I think. And Liam Neeson, he ended up getting the part because Nolan thought it would be more shocking if it was revealed he was the main bad guy. Because, yeah, when you really look at some of these other guys, you know, a lot of them were used to playing villains, you know, especially Gary Oldman.
Yeah.
Because just about every other role I can think of for Gary Oldman was like a villain, you know? Fifth Element, The Professional, Dracula. He fucking played Dracula. I mean, how much more villainous does it get than that?
That is something interesting, how it's kind of like a role reversal for both Liam Neeson and Gary Oldman.
It is, yeah. Yeah. You would expect it to be the other way around. And Viggo Mortensen, aside from playing Aragorn, a lot of his roles before that, he would play villains. So, you know. And Daniel Day-Lewis, he could go either way, actually. Like, a few years before this, he was in Gangs of New York, which he's a great villain in that one. Some of the other casting choices for Rachel Dawes included Reese Witherspoon. Which I don't know about that. Rachel McAdams. I think she would have been better than Katie Holmes.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, that would have, if she had been cast, it would have been yet another movie in 2005 that she appeared in with Cillian Murphy as the bad guy. Because they were both in a Wes Craven movie called Red Eye the same year.
Huh.
And he plays the bad guy in that movie. So. Sarah Michelle Gellar, which I don't know.
The thing is with Rachel is I don't know how much recasting that role really would have helped it, considering just how minor it was.
Kurt Russell and Dennis Quaid were considered to play Gordon.
I feel like that's a waste of Kurt Russell. Like, cast Kurt Russell as Ra's al Ghul.
That's true. That could have worked, yeah. Actually. And Dennis Quaid, no. Just that, I don't think that would have really fit. Now, Lucius Fox, on the other hand, was written for one person.
Really?
And you know who that person is?
Was it Morgan Freeman?
Yes. Morgan Freeman. And guess what? He's in the movie.
Shocker.
So that was easy. Kurt Russell as Commissioner Gordon.
That would have been a travesty. It's like getting Kurt Russell on for a movie and only having him be the narrator. Wait a second.
I think I mentioned Darren Aronofsky was considered to direct. Yeah. Hell, as far back as this, they were considering a Batman vs. Superman movie.
Yeah. Who would they have as Superman?
They didn't have it. Josh Hartnett? Are you fucking kidding me? Maybe it's a good thing that didn't happen. Apparently, when they were trying to do a Batman Year One or a Batman Beyond movie, they wanted Joaquin Phoenix.
Huh. That's interesting, because that's another actor who would go on to become the Joker.
Yep, another one. Yep, Heath Ledger and Joaquin Phoenix were both considered to play Batman. Wolfgang Peterson, he was considered to direct Batman vs. Superman. So we would have had the director of Neverending Story, In the Line of Fire, Outbreak, and Air Force One doing a Batman movie. Apparently they were trying to do a Justice League movie directed by George Miller.
Oh. That would have been odd.
With Armie Hammer as Batman. Are you kidding me? Well, that would be interesting though, seeing George Miller do a Batman movie. Okay, we can end right here. So yeah, next time we'll be doing The Dark Knight.
Often considered to be one of, if not the, greatest comic book movie.
Yep.
And I guess we'll be back then.
Cue Andy Griffith.
Good night, you stupid idiot. Good night, you miserable slob.